Houthi militia continues to breach the truce in different fronts while Taiz governorate remains under the rebels' blockade. As war in Ukraine extends, the United Nations says that more than 17 million Yemeni people are food insecure. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim King concludes a regional mission to mobilize international efforts on resolving safer tanker crisis. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushain Fouad. Since the UN Special Envoy announced the 2-month truce, Houthi militia has been breaching such a truce on a daily basis. Also, although the truce included lifting out the siege on Taiz, no progress has been made in that regard. The following report has more details on this.
The Houthi rebels have been trying to enter the center of the western city of Taiz, but have repeatedly failed. In consequence, heavy fighting between government troops and Houthi militia has broken out in Taiz during the last period. Government troops intensified attacks on Iran-backed Houthis occupying the western and eastern edges of the city after the militia stepped up mortar fire on residential areas in the city's downtown. After failing to storm the center of Taiz since 2015, the Houthis have positioned themselves on the city's outskirts, targeting densely populated areas with heavy weapons. Essential food and humanitarian supplies have also been blocked from reaching the besieged population. The Houthi siege has forced residents to use rough and dangerous mountain routes to leave or enter the city. Taiz overlooks Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the international waterway which connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. The city, however, suffers from economic, social, and educational negligence. Economic decline has driven citizens to protest the absence of basic commodities, while the shops are almost empty. Taiz roads are closed after sunset, and a line of fire is formed instead. If travelers are late, they are forced to go through an even more rugged and dangerous roads.
A team from UN mission to support Hodeidah agreement visited 3 demining sites in Hodeidah. This came as part of Ummaha's efforts to strengthen its coordination role in demining action in the governorate. During the visit, Ummaha renewed its commitment to supporting accelerated mine action to allow the children, women, and men in Hodeidah to live their lives without fear. World Food Programme aims to provide nearly 13 million people with food assistance during 2022. United Nations stated 17.4 million people are food insecure in Yemen, and the situation is expected to worsen due to the war in Ukraine. World Food Programme is working to help Yemeni people with flour, oil, sugar, salt, and other food supplies. The Houthi militia forces citizens to give up part of the World Food Programme aid. Local sources in Amran Governorate confirmed that the militia in Dark Habur district continues to pressure citizens to return part of the World Food Programme aid. This came after the militia failed to force them to give it up before it was distributed by the organization's officials. As the war in Ukraine escalates, the United Nations Food Programme keeps raising alarms about the impact of such a conflict on the humanitarian situation in Yemen. The following report has more details on this.
Northern Yemen's wheat fields spread for miles, yet they are insufficient to feed a country where millions die hungry. Already on the verge of famine, war-torn Yemen fears a lack of the key food item due to a different conflict, one in Ukraine, which is one of the world's largest producers of the grain. Farmers are hard at work harvesting their crop before milling the wheat and delivering it primarily to the Houthi-held capital, Sana'a. Most of Yemen's roughly 30 million citizens will not be able to taste this locally grown crop, because the country relies almost exclusively on food imports, with about a third of its wheat supply coming from Ukraine, according to the United Nations. People across the Middle East and North Africa are battling to get even the most basic necessities, as food and gasoline costs skyrocket due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February. After more than 7 years of civil conflict, the Arab world's poorest country was experiencing the world's greatest humanitarian crisis, according to the United Nations. According to UN-backed assessments in March, more than 17 million Yemenis experienced severe food insecurity, and the figure is certain to rise. According to UN organizations, more than 30,000 Yemenis are suffering from famine. Yemen's food costs have already risen since last year, and the country's years of conflict have resulted in an economic disaster. Wheat importers and dealers have raised a similar concern. As global oil prices increase, so will transportation expenses, putting a great strain on people. A 2-month UN-brokered ceasefire went into effect on April 2nd, the war's first national truce since 2016. As part of the accord, the coalition agreed to lift its embargo on Sana'a to allow 2 weekly commercial flights. Fuel and food shipments will also arrive at the crucial assistance port of Hodeidah, which is currently under rebel control. More than 150,000 people were reported to have died in the conflict. The truce, which began on the first day of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, has brought the carnage to a halt. However, the struggle for survival continues as Yemenis try to feed themselves.
Health has criticized the new US-led task force that will patrol the Red Sea following a series of attacks by the Iran-backed rebels in a waterway that's essential to global trade. The Houthis' chief negotiator and spokesman said that the U.S. move in the Red Sea, which comes amid the ceasefire in the country's civil war, contradicts Washington's claim of supporting the UN-brokered truce. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim King has concluded a regional visit as part of a joint UN-U.S. mission, aiming at mobilizing efforts to resolve the crisis of the aging oil tanker Safer. They also urged Houthis to fully cooperate and facilitate international efforts in this regard. The Fang Report has more details on this.
At the end of a 3-week trip by the U.S. Special Envoy for Yemen, Tim King, to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar, there has been a U.S. diplomatic effort to yield tangible results that improve the lives of Yemenis and advance peace. The U.S. supported the UN efforts to achieve a 2-month ceasefire, which began on April 2, and aimed to give Yemenis immediate respite by facilitating the movement of people and goods, including fuel. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim King has urged the parties to abide by the UN truce terms in order to pave the way for a viable long-term resolution to the conflict. Over the past years, the Special Envoy has tried to reach an inexclusive Yemeni-led efforts to reform Yemen's government to ensure it meets the needs of all citizens and responds to their demands for justice, accountability, and redress for human rights violations and abuses.
The United States remains concerned with the UN's estimated $3.9 billion funding gap in 2022, and we continue to urge donors to fulfill their pledges to the people of Yemen and to step up to give generously. In terms of U.S. economic support, we continue to advocate with other partners to provide economic support to advance critical reforms, to address the issues of salaries, infrastructure, and to address the fuel crisis.
Throughout his trip, King advocated for additional humanitarian assistance to help close funding gaps that have reduced life-saving assistance for millions of Yemenis, as well as additional economic assistance to address Yemen's growing economic crisis. In addition, the Special Envoy concluded his trip by joining a UN-led mission to raise awareness about the threat posed by the aging Safer oil tanker and raise funds for an emergency UN plan to prevent the devastating regional economic, humanitarian, and environmental consequences of a spill. Also, David Gressley, the UN's resident and humanitarian coordinator for Yemen, added that they cannot wait for those discussions to conclude before safeguarding the oil in a temporary vessel. He also added that there are several options as what would happen to Safer itself, which as a floating storage and offloading vessel is obsolete.
I just finished participating in a UN-led mission to help raise awareness about the urgent need to address the imminent economic, humanitarian, and environmental threats the Safer oil tanker poses to the region. The Safer is sitting off the coast of Yemen with 1.1 million barrels of oil on board. It has not been maintained for 7 years because of the war in Yemen.
According to the U.S. State Department, Yemenis are expressing cautious optimism for the first time in years as a result of the constructive steps in recent weeks. All parties to the conflict must answer Yemenis' demands for peace by choosing dialogue over destruction and cooperating with UN-led peace efforts. In the end, the Yemeni people seek to have a better future and a safe life where everyone can live with no danger.
The death of a young man under torture in the prisons of the Houthi militia. Local sources said that a young man died under torture in one of the prisons of the militia in Hajj Governorate. This came 3 months later after he was kidnapped and hidden from his family. The Houthis lead the widest looting campaign of state lands and public parks in Sana'a. Local sources said that Houthi leaders inspect lands and gardens and seize them in Sana'a Governorate. According to the sources, Houthis carry out construction operations inside these spaces by force of arms and without licenses, and then they are sold. West of Qa'taba, farmers complained about Houthi looting and burning of crops. The Houthi militia has prevented farmers from irrigating and guarding their farms during the night hours in the area. Local sources confirmed that the Houthi militia's elements stationed on the outskirts of citizens' farms on the borders of Beit el-Sharji area. Al-Qaeda terrorist organization seems to be spreading its activities again in Abyan Governorate. Informed sources said that the militants of Al-Qaeda established their spread and movements in Abyan Governorate. This came a day after a number of the group's members escaped from Sayoun Central Prison in Wadi Hadramaut. Coming next. In Aden, Ramadan breakfast gatherings boost up social. This among people in the time of war.
هذا هو محل استهداف الحواث الذين استهدفوا المواطنين وهم نائمين. هذا هو الصاروخ. من الساعة 4 ما سمعنا الضربة من الحوثيين في المخيم. هذا يعني استشهدوا أولاد عمي، هذا استشهدوا أنا أخواني كلهم يعني شوف يعني الدم في الخيم. الدم في الخيم يعني في كل مكان، يعني رؤوسهم ما التقوش، الراس ما التقاش، الراس ما التقاش. الحمد لله الحمد.
Welcome back. Ramadan is known as the month of spirituality and good deeds. It is the month of social solidarity. In Aden, different youth initiatives organize huge gatherings of iftar or breakfast. Such gatherings play a key role in boosting up social bonds among people. The Fang Report has more details on this.
El Azabi Council held a large iftar for the 5th year in a row to gather young people from the governorate of Aden and its surroundings in Corniche of Shahid Ja'far in the district of Khor Maksar. A warm family atmosphere and a youthful gathering surrounded by brotherhood and harmony on iftar table, in which the youth reflected the principle of coexistence and peace in its purest form.
The idea started 5 years ago. We do iftar gatherings in many areas, including suburbs and among high school students. So we decided to gather all of them in one place, and the Al-Azbi Council has adopted this idea.
In the Corniche area of Shahid Jafar in Khor Maksar district, young people didn't come only from the districts of Aden, but there were delegations that participated in the event from the neighboring governorates, in an image that expresses social solidarity, despite the difference in customs and traditions from one governorate to another.
I came from Lahj Governorate to participate in this gathering, which we are deprived of due to the ongoing circumstances.
This collective iftar table, organized by young people, included many activities, most notably entertaining sports competitions, aimed at gathering and spreading joy among young people.
I thank the organizers of iftar for their efforts. The aim of this event is to unify us all, despite the conflict that the country is witnessing for years.
This Ramadani event translated the meaning of love and brotherly bonding among the people of Yemen, embodied by the youth in an attempt to revive the nights of the holy month in their own way, and to convey a message through it to the whole world that Yemeni people coexist and they are only looking for peace, a peace that restores the homeland and the citizens' dignity.
Houthi militia raises electricity prices in Sana'a Governorate. Local sources in Sana'a stated that the stations charge 1 kilowatt of electricity to 550 rials by increasing 130 rials. The sources confirmed that citizens are obliged to pay the new violating price in order not to be exposed to a power cut. In El Dala, the city dialysis center contributes in alleviating some of the suffering of people with chronic renal failure. People from different governorates head to this center for medication. The center provides free medical services to people. More details on this are in the following report.
A glimmer of hope amid deteriorating economic and health conditions, this dialysis center in Al Dala city provides free treatment to patients with kidney failure and other diseases. The center works to alleviate the patient's pain and suffering, particularly the downtrodden class which cannot pay the expensive treatment costs in private hospitals. The center receives visitors from Al Dala and neighboring governorates.
This center provides us with free treatment. We're grateful for the kind-hearted volunteers working here. We thank this dialysis center in Al Dala, the general administration that runs it, and the nurses that have helped alleviate our pain. We are also grateful for the reduced cost of treatment.
The dialysis center hosts dozens of cases daily in an old and modest building that is in dire need of maintenance and expansion. The center also needs more support and the provision of medicines for diseases associated with renal failure. It is the only center in the governorate to continue providing its services to patients, and for most patients it is a lifeline.
This center receives people from various governorates, and it is in need of aid from humanitarian organizations. We need medicine for renal failure and the chronic diseases associated with it. Our capacity is 30 patients a day. We host renal failure patients from across different governorates for dialysis administration. The most prominent issue we've encountered so far is with the roof. This center used to be an old government building in need of maintenance and renovation.
Dozens of patients filter into this building daily for much-needed expensive treatment. The center requires aid and maintenance to run its processes smoothly and to continue administering dialysis for its patients.
Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Houthi militia continues to breach the truce in different fronts while Taiz governorate remains under the rebels' blockade. As war in Ukraine extends, the United Nations says that more than 17 million Yemeni people are food insecure. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim Lenderking concludes a regional mission to mobilize international efforts on resolving safer tanker crisis. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouet. Thank you for watching.